All right, and welcome back again to the Paisan Sports podcast. I don't know why I'm being so enthusiastic, but hey, welcome back. Dante DePlacido, joined as always by Zach Deal.
I thought you were going to say DeLeon like the good old days, but I guess those days have
Yeah, I
passed, man.
forgot all
I
about that.
appreciate the
Yeah,
respect, though. I get my name right. But yes, we're back. Another edition of the Paisan Sports Podcast, episode number 42, and our fifth episode under the E5280 Sports
fourth,
platform. Is it
fourth
the fourth?
episode, fourth.
Is it the
Yeah,
fourth? I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit. So
it's the fourth. It's the fourth. Anyway, yeah, back again. The only real new developments this week in the world of Philly sports is the Sixers now entering the play-in tournament. Thanks to Doc Rivers, who he's not even on the Sixers anymore, and he still wants to screw us. All he had to do was beat the Magic and couldn't get that done. So now we're looking at the play-in tournament. So thanks, Doc. Thanks for nothing.
yeah, I think you just like bringing up Doc Rivers and just you still
I
have
hate
this
him. I hate him.
disdain
I
versus Doc
despise
Rivers.
him.
But
I
I mean, at the
despise
end of the
him.
day, the Sixers, with a healthy Joel Embiid, I think we both would agree they're not playing in this play-in tournament. They would probably at least have locked
Oh,
up somewhere
they
between
would
one
have
of
the
the top
two
four
seed.
seeds.
They would have
So,
the way they were playing before Embiid got hurt, and with the additions of Kyle Lowry, Campaign, and Buddy Hield, especially. They would easily be sitting pretty at the 2 seed right now. They were behind the Bucks, not by a lot, before Embiid got hurt, and that was before Doc took over, and they went on a losing record ever since then. So there's no doubt in my mind they would have passed the Bucks.
that's a crazy stat in itself that before Doc took over that you said that just shows how much do we believe the Bucks are actually a true contender with not only
They're
having
not.
Doc Rivers as their coach, but Doc Rivers only being there for a short period of time. But at the end of the day, their roster's talented enough to be able to overcome those things, even though Giannis is doubtful for game one.
Well, I tell you what, man, I am more worried playing the Knicks than I would be the Bucks at this point. I mean, the Bucks pre-Doc, I'd be more worried about the Bucks, but as I've mentioned, since Doc Rivers took over as head coach, the Bucks have had a losing record, and the Knicks, in games where OG Anunoby has played, they're 20-3. Now, however, for us in games where everyone has played, including Kelly Oubre and Joel Embiid, we are also coincidentally 20-3 as well. So not to say that because of that stat by the New York Knicks that I feel we would lose in the first round. Keep in mind we still got to win the first play-in game, but the Knicks definitely scared me more than the Bucks would. So,
The
but
Knicks have played the Sixers very well this season too. I think they win the season series.
I don't know. Have they?
I'm pretty sure the Knicks have
I'm
won the
gonna
season
I'm gonna
series.
I'm gonna fact check that. I'm gonna fact check that. Um, but the big importance of this playing game against the Miami Heat of obviously is that if you lose this game and then you end up competing for the 8 seed, then you have to go against Boston round one. And in that case, it's wraps. It's just over. But okay, so this year, okay, well, this is just for the calendar year of 2024, but the Knicks took 3 out of 4 games since the new year started. Not the new season, but since the new year started is what I was able to find. So, yeah, I would assume the Knicks took the season series.
Well, they only
And
play a max of 4 times, so
okay, yeah, I guess all the games took place in 2024 then. But if it was all post New Year's, I mean, I'm assuming maybe it was all without Joel Embiid. Let's see, the first game, January 5th, Sixers roster. No, Embiid played.
yeah,
Embiid played
played.
in that game, and they got blown out 128-92. Um, Yeah, that's not looking great. Granted, you had Jaden Springer giving you 15 minutes of all people. Nobody healed, no Kyle Lowry. So, but yeah, so the next, it's not going to be an easy. Oh, that's right. And then there was the 79-73 game. I forgot all about that. I don't think OG Anunoby played in that game for the Knicks. No, they were missing a lot of guys in that game. Um, and Alec Burks played 12 minutes for. I forgot he went to the Knicks at the deadline. He was looking awful for the Pistons this year.
Former Philadelphia 76er too.
Yeah, yeah, and he was good on the Sixers. I liked him on the Sixers, but I saw some
He was definitely a
Pistons.
solid role player. He was somebody that actually played a big role for them. He would heat up off the bench and played good defense. So he's somebody that definitely adds value to somebody's rotation lineup. But before we start talking about and looking ahead and talking about the Knicks and what a potential matchup between the 2 and the 7 seed would be if the Sixers beat the Heat on Wednesday night, let's talk about the potentials on Wednesday night. What do you think is going to happen in this game, and how do you think it's going to play out? Do you think the Sixers have a clear advantage for playing this game at home? And do you think we're going to see the Heat just snap into it and playoff Jimmy come out and be ready to play? Or do you think the Heat are going to struggle like they have been pretty much the entire season?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, obviously playing in Philly is going to be an advantage for the Sixers. I mean, it's the Philadelphia home crowd, and that's no joke. However, what also is no joke is playoff Jimmy Butler. I don't think you're going to see the regular season Miami Heat that you've seen all year. I think they are going to kick it into high gear in the playoffs like they always do. Um, but if I want to go back and check, I mean, the Miami Heat last year, they were the 8th seed. So I'm assuming they lost their first playing
They
game
did
last
lose
year
the
as
first
well.
playoff. They did lose the first playing game.
Yeah, they played. Who did they play? That's what I'm trying to find. Um, okay, they lost to the Hawks. Which that was a Hawks team with Trae Young, but still, so the fact that they lost their playing game last year gives me, makes me feel a little bit better about it because that is the same team, obviously, that went from being the 8th seed and going all the way to the NBA Finals. So the fact that they were still capable of losing that first playing game to the Atlanta Hawks gives me some more confidence. I What also gives me confidence isn't the lack there of the Miami Heat, but how good the Sixers team looks when fully healthy. When fully healthy, with everyone on the court, with Embiid at the top of his game, this team has looked unbeatable at times. So that also gives me confidence. I'm expecting a Sixers win. I'm not fully sold on the Sixers win. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they lost. But if I had to put money on it, I would say the Sixers take this win.
Yeah, I'm actually confident the Sixers winning this game. I do think the Heat will find their way into the playoffs and win that second game to get the 8th seed, and then it'll be a matchup and a rematch of the Eastern Conference Finals, which is very interesting with the Celtics as the 1 seed and them as the 8th seed. But like you said, a healthy Joel Embiid, they just look too good. They're still missing D'Anthony Melton and Robert Covington, who we've seen
I'm not
very,
worried.
very little of. But I mean, at the end of the day, without Robert Covington ever really playing since he's came over, it's not really a thing, or it doesn't
Yeah.
really feel like a
Plus,
loss.
you have Nico Batum out there who basically does the same things Robert Covington does. He plays good defense. He hits threes when he needs to. It's basically the same role. So I'm not sweating the loss of Robert Covington. And same thing with D'Anthony Melton. You're missing D'Anthony Melton, but you have so many other guards. You have Tyrese Maxey, you have Buddy Hield, you have Kyle Lowry, you have Campaign.
Yeah, they're
So
actually loaded at the 1 and 2 guard position, so that's
yeah,
not the biggest loss. But there's not exactly a player in the rotation without D'Anthony Melton that does the stuff that D'Anthony Melton does. So that's what little worries me a little bit. But they played numerous stretches of the entire year without D'Anthony Melton
yeah.
throughout the season with the back injury. So I think they're going to be able to overcome it. I'm interested to see how the rotation does play out. And if they do switch things up a little bit, maybe we see a little bit more of Lowry and Tyrese Maxey on the court in certain situations, even versus the Heat, who Kyle Lowry obviously came from um, after he was traded, before he was traded, I should say, and spent a lot of time with the Heat. So maybe he knows some intricacies about the Miami Heat that players that haven't played on that roster don't know. So that could be
That's
an
a good
advantage
point.
to the Sixers.
Yeah.
Um, and I really like Kyle Lowry just out there in general. I think he's just a player that really fits. I think the Sixers can win by allowing Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid to do their thing. Really, even Joel. Tyrese just has to, stay to his averages. Joel's probably going to, give you a 40 clip almost every single night that he's out there. And if we can, get anything out of Tobias Harris, I'm laughing as I say it because, at this point, he's not reliable. But if there's a third person that can just step up and keep things afloat, I think the Sixers are in good shape, whether that's Tobias Harris, Kelly Oubre, or even we see a campaign off the bench type of game where he starts lighting it up. So I think they're going to need more than just Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey doing their thing, but not to, backtrack what I just said. I think it will be enough, at least for the playing game, if Joel Embiid can just dominate.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I would not be mad at all if Tobias Harris didn't even play. He literally makes the team worse, and that's not even me just trying to criticize him. If you think back to, I forget what game it was, but it was very recent where Sixers were 3.5 point underdogs, and then once Tobias Harris was ruled out, they were 1.5 point underdogs, and the young guys out there have looked a lot better than him. KJ Martin has looked better than him. Kelly Oubre has looked better than him. Ricky Council has looked a lot better than him. So I would much rather see the young guys who actually play well and provide a lot of energy on the court out there than Tobias Harris. Unfortunately, we will see Tobias Harris out there. I do think Tobias plays a bit better when Joel Embiid is on the court, and so does everybody, really. When Embiid's out there, he's just attracting so much attention that he's getting open looks for everyone else. So, but, Tobias, the other thing, too, is somebody pointed out on Twitter, the worst thing that could happen for the Sixers in this game against the Miami Heat is Tobias Harris thinking this is his revenge game against Jimmy Butler for those comments Jimmy Butler made a couple of years ago, because that's when the Sixers are at their worst, when Tobias Harris
I won't buy too much into that because I think
buckets.
Tobias, as much as people have come to hate Tobias Harris, even though he's actually a nice guy, but just more so for his own
Oh, yeah, he's a
play.
nice guy. As a person, I like him, but on the court,
Yeah, for his own court play. I mean,
insane.
remember when Bobby was here and it was Toby and Bobby and everybody loved both of them, and it was just
Speaking of
those things
that,
were
shout
possible.
out to Boban Marjanovic did you see what happened in the Houston Rockets game last night?
Yeah, he purposely missed for bricking for a chicken. Was it bricking
Yeah,
for a chicken? Is that what it was for?
I don't know if they call it that, but it is the same setup. You miss 2 free throws, the fans get chicken. I don't know if they
There's not
also
too many people that take pride or actually even look into things like that. So shout out to Boban for doing that. But a lot
random
a lot
people.
of grown men out there playing basketball professionally for a living. He's in a separate situation. He's just a fan favorite that really doesn't have to do too much. Gigantic dude, and just even getting movie roles for his
Yeah,
popularity in the NBA.
he almost killed John Wick. So shout out to him. He died by the hands of a textbook, though.
I still haven't even seen that movie. As crazy as that sounds, I have yet to see that. So I
Now,
gotta
when you say
check it
that,
out.
do you mean you just haven't seen John Wick Chapter 3, or do you mean you haven't seen John
No, I
Wick?
haven't seen any of them.
You have not seen any John Wick movies?
No, no.
Who in the right mind in the year of 2024 has never seen John Wick?
I don't really watch movies like that. I'm down to watch movies. I try and watch more movies now. I
That's
try
like
and
one of the movies you have to watch.
I know it's definitely is. I'm not saying like I'm not ever going to watch it. I'm just saying I have yet to watch it.
You've had
But
like
my
10
first
years
experience,
to do it.
my first experience with John Wick. Where do you think my first experience with John Wick was from?
You haven't had any experience with John Wick. You've never
Yes, I
seen it.
have. Where do you think my first experience with John
I
Wick
know
was
you
from?
got an autograph from Keanu Reeves.
No, from Fortnite
I didn't even
with
know
the
John
John
Wick
Wick skin.
was. I didn't even know John Wick was in Fortnite.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's like one of the
I've
most
played.
popular
I
skins in
played
Fortnite.
Fortnite
I
like a
haven't played
little bit
Fortnite
when
in
it
quite
first
some time,
came
but
out.
getting
Um,
back on topic, I actually real quickly, I do try and spend like of all the sports that I do watch, and I watch a bunch of different sports, so it's a lot to keep up with, especially this time of year with all the crossovers of sports with baseball, basketball, MMA, um, and men's and women's on both sides. I do try and associate or put away one day where I do watch a movie at night instead of watching sports. So I'm not sure if that's
and
good for this
you
podcast.
have not worked John Wick into the rotation. That
Is
is
John Wick on Netflix or?
great. I don't know. It's one of those movies where it hops around from streaming service to streaming service. Streaming services now they work in different rotations every month. You just Google the movie
That is
and then
true.
it tells you what it's streaming.
Paramount, Amazon Prime Video,
There's
Netflix,
too many now. Yeah.
YouTube. YouTube's always a classic, though. I'm always down to go on YouTube and find some
Well,
stuff
you
on
can
YouTube.
rent movies on YouTube. I always just use Apple TV for
You
that.
can even go the old school on demand way, too.
I don't even have cable anymore, but I used to do that still. Now I just rent movies through Apple TV, which is easier because I'd rather just pay that $6 up front as I rent the movie than get hit with like 3 movies when the cable bill comes.
So if you don't have cable, how do you access sports like live sports?
YouTube TV has
Oh, YouTube TV has the whole thing.
yeah,
Yeah, I know some
YouTube
people that
TV
were
is
using.
basically cable.
I know some people that were using YouTube TV during the football season. It was really good for. I think they had
I
the
had an
season ticket on there.
issue. Yeah, I had an issue with YouTube TV at first, though, for like the first month I had it, where it only happened on NBC Sports Philadelphia if I was watching like a Sixers game or whatever, where the audio after a few minutes would be out of sync. So like the ball would bounce off the rim, and then like a
Yeah.
second later I would hear the sound effect for it. And I could watch any channel, I wouldn't have that issue. Only NBC Sports Philly I had that issue with. I could watch a nationally televised Sixers game on ESPN or TNT. That wouldn't happen. Only NBC Sports Philly, but that eventually stopped, thankfully. But yeah, that was weird. Um, anyhow, while on the topic of basketball, before we transition out of that, let's talk because today Team USA has been announced, and the roster is going to feature LeBron, Steph, KD, Embiid, Tatum, Booker, Drew Holiday. Okay, I'm a little surprised to see that. I'd rather see Tyrese Maxey. And Anthony Davis, Ant Edwards, Bam Adebayo, and Tyrese Halliburton. I'd even rather see Jalen Brunson than Drew Holiday, but shout out Drew Holiday. So yeah, I mean, what do we think? What do we think of this Team USA
That's
squad?
a really solid roster that can do everything. I mean, you got three of the greatest players of all time at the top of the roster of the players that you mentioned. You
Mm-hmm.
got guys now that are flourishing, and you got just a little bit of everything. So you got two
And
really good big men.
not only that, but you have Joel Embiid, who became a U.S. citizen so that he could join this roster.
A lot of
So
people think he could have played for France, and he just didn't want to, seeing Gobert and Wemby on that roster. But I
well, it
don't.
would
I
make
mean,
sense. It's a very crowded center position.
I know, but at the end of the day, even with how great Wembanyama already is, and Rudy Gobert is obviously an extremely solid player, it's Joel Embiid. Like, you're not going to take
Yeah,
Joel
no,
Embiid.
I'm not saying Joel Embiid wouldn't start, but this way he gets to be the star of the show from the center position. And not only that, I mean, he gets to play for the country that he lives in. I mean, what would it mean to play for Team France? Which Joel
That is true.
Embiid
I'm
is
not knocking him for the decision. I was just more so talking about the clamorings of what people thought was the reason why he did went to the Team USA instead of playing for Team France. But at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters. I think he's just showing his love for the country that gave him
Yeah.
citizenship. So But
Yeah,
I think
and
Joel Embiid. What do we think the stat line for Joel Embiid versus Miami Heat is going to be tomorrow night? Because this isn't your normal play-in matchup, and this isn't like a team where yeah they have Jimmy Butler, but they don't have a big man that can match up with Joel Embiid. There's not too many big men that can match up with Joel Embiid. But if there's a guy that is going to be able to take part in possibly slowing down Joel Embiid as one of the centers in the league, it's probably going to be Bam Adebayo's name is going to come up on that list.
yeah, I definitely don't think Embiid is going to be able to do everything he usually does on the court with Bam Adebayo defending him. I don't think that means Joel Embiid's going to struggle because really, there at this point in Embiid's career, there is no center that he struggles against. Earlier in his career, there was Al Horford when it was a prime Al Horford, and when Joel Embiid wasn't yet at his peak.
I
So
feel
I
like people not to cut you off real quickly, but I feel like people really uh, don't look too deep into that 71 point game. Where if Victor Wembanyama gets named the Defensive Player of the Year, he just dropped it on his head.
Yeah, that is something that's overlooked a lot. You're right, and it doesn't
And that's
surprise
something that
me.
like I like Wemby a lot, and I think he's absolutely phenomenal. He looks like he's on pace to being arguably the best player in the league in possibly like 6 years. Kind of like more so, or at least in the conversation, like kind of like the come up of Giannis. You didn't really see Giannis like when you looked at him when he was a 19-year-old growing into the player that he is now, but I could see him astronomically going meteor like rise to the top of the NBA. But if you look at some of the matchups with him this year and when he's going against big men, like they still have really solid stat lines. Like Jokic, I think what the last time they played, Jokic dropped like 42, 12, and 6 on him. And I know it's Jokic and Embiid. They're not, slouches by any means. They're the MVPs of the league and everything. But I feel like if you're the defensive player of the year, that you shouldn't be giving up, regardless of the
Well,
talent,
here's the thing.
those
Here's
types of
the
games.
thing: is Victor Wembanyama, which what makes him a phenomenal defender is his height, his long reach, his ability to close out on anybody, just about anybody, to block shots. Um, and his mobility. That's what makes him an elite defender. But the guy is a twig, and that's not to criticize him or anything. And like you said, he'll grow into himself. But when you take bigger, stronger centers like Joel Embiid, like Nikola Jokic, obviously he's going to struggle, especially against Embiid. Embiid is just pure muscle, and he is a gigantic man. So Wembanyama at this point, at this figure against Embiid, it's no surprise that he struggled mightily against him. And that is also what I want to get into with Embiid's matchup against Bam Adebayo is there are so many centers out there who are great defenders that struggle against Embiid, such as the likes of Rudy Gobert, Wembanyama, Nikola Jokic, as we've seen in their matchups recently, because Wembanyama too thin for Embiid. Rudy Gobert, not he's a lot bigger than Wembanyama, but also still too thin. Embiid's too strong. Nikola Jokic, he's big, but he's too slow. I think Bam is kind of a good in between range of having some of the athleticism needed to guard Embiid, having some of the size needed to guard Embiid, some of the length. So I think he's going to give him some fits. I think Embiid's still going to have a very good game, going to drop at least 30 points. I think Maxey is going to have a big game. Unless I don't know if they would put Butler on Maxey. I don't know. I mean, do you slide Butler all the way down to guard him?
I
Knowing that,
don't I don't know if he's going to take on the assignment of playing on ball like that the entire time. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I don't know how much of a threat. I mean, I think with the plays cycling through and everything, that could be the mindset and the matchup that they want to get. But at the end of the day, it might not be able to be had the entire game. So, but like you said, 30 points for Joel Embiid. That's almost like anything under 30 points in any type of
Well, I'm
situation in the
saying 30
NBA.
plus. If I had to guess, I would say more so like the 36 range. Um,
It's so crazy how it's come to the point where that's if we compare that to other sports, that's like, if as great as Bryce Harper is, that's like Bryce Harper batting like 3 40. You know what I mean? That's like Jalen Hurts always throwing at least 2 touchdown passes in a game and having a rushing touchdown. Like, that is astronomical or production, and it's really crazy that Joel Embiid is that consistent with, we don't even
Yeah,
know
I
what
mean
his
that's his season average, which is just insane, or at
35
least
points a game is still
yeah.
ridiculous. Like, and we thought, after we saw Harden do it a couple years back, we didn't think it would be replicated again, especially by a big man that most of his points come from post-ups, not even threes.
Well, I wouldn't
So
really say post-ups. I would say like face-ups at the top of the key,
yeah,
but
face
yeah,
up and post ups, but the mindset of,
a lot less
either
threes
at the
though.
top of the block or the elbow, just wherever he wants to get the ball. But he's so good everywhere. Even his ball handling is absolutely ridiculous. So, yeah, I think it's going to
And
be
his
an only.
perimeter defense, if you're talking on the defensive side and things being different for him, being that he's a big man in that game against the Miami Heat a couple of weeks ago, I remember him guarding Terry Rozier out on the perimeter and doing a phenomenal job. But anyway, let's transition now over to the Philadelphia Phillies as we take a live look in at what's going on. It is currently the bottom of the ninth. It's still tied 1-1. Brandon Marsh just struck out as I'm speaking here. So there's one out, bases
Speaking
empty.
of Brandon Marsh, real quickly, he has been making his way up in the batting order. How do you feel about that? He started
I
off
mean,
at the
he's
very
been our
bottom of the
best
batting
hitter.
order. They
He's been our
switched him
best hitter
from
this year.
the first move was switching him and Bryson Stott, which moved him up a little bit, but now he batted fifth today, correctly? Is that correct?
Let me see. Give me 1 second here. Schwarber led off, Turner second, Harper third, Real Muto fourth, and yeah, Marsh batting fifth. He's 0 for 4 today with a strikeout, but I mean, to start the season, he's been our best hitter. Um, Batting 288, which 288 is a very good batting average, but this early in the season, sometimes you see some crazy high batting averages. So batting 288 with an 886 OPS. He's been our best hitter this year. He's got 4 home runs. He's been the only real spark in our offense. However, Trey Turner's been picking it up a bit lately. He's 1 for 4 today with a run scored. He's got his batting average up to 299. He hit a solo home run. What was it? It was yesterday.
Yesterday, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Marsh
So
also tripled yesterday, so, that's
yeah.
a
So
consistent offense from those
Turner's
guys. Bryce is absolutely ice cold. What's Bryce's stats for, tonight's game?
Harper's 1 for 3, along with a walk and a strikeout. It's not an awful game. Let's look at who's 0 for today. You got Costi who's 0 for 4. You got Witt who's 0 for 3. Rojas 0 for 3. No surprise there. And Schwarb's 0 for 3, although he also had a walk. So 0 for 3
All right,
with the
so
one.
let's start. Let me stop you there. So if Nick Castellanos continues the route that he's going for this season, do you think the Phillies are just going to put up with it and just have him play out there? Or do you think they're going to start trying to platoon maybe Marsh, Pache, and Rojas over to that side and have it locked in? Do you think they start looking elsewhere and maybe trying to go at the trade deadline or even trade him? What do you think is going to go on with Castellanos? Because he's been god awful this year.
I think
Outside
I
of the
think the
game-winning
most
hit that he had on
likely
Saturday night, but,
I
outside of
think
obviously the moment he's had.
I think the most likely outcome, if anything happens, I mean, the most likely outcome if his struggles continue, and I say if his struggles continue because we've seen from last year he can get hot at times, but if the struggles continue, I see the most likely outcome being a trade, really, a deadline trade because you're paying him way too much money to platoon him. So I don't really see them doing that. I can
Yeah,
see
but I
them
mean,
knocking
first off, if
him
we're
back in
talking
the
about
order.
paying too much money, Taiwan Walker wasn't even used in the playoffs and hasn't been active this year, obviously because of the injury, and they're paying him 18 million a year. So I don't know if
Listen,
they would just bite the bullet and try and add to their roster and keep him as a utility bat, maybe off the
that's
bench,
way
or
yeah, but that's way too. Listen, Taiwan Walker, that was sort of a decision come postseason time. This was a decision made well after the deadline. going into the deadline, you're not going to keep a guy on your roster to be the most expensive utility guy in the MLB. So if you're going to do that,
Yeah,
you
but
might
who's
as well
trading? Who's
trade.
going to trade for that contract if he keeps going on the trajectory that he's going right now?
I don't know,
That's
maybe
also the
some
other thing they
idiot
get to
team
think
like
about.
the White Sox. Who knows? Um,
I would
because
like to
that's
say, stick it out for. I
expensive.
mean, I'm not talking about trading him right now, but if we creep into around the trade deadline time and we get to June, July, and he's been still batting under 200 and looking as bad as he's looked, I mean, you have to start looking elsewhere because you want to shore up the lineup as much as you possibly can, and it seems like you might be platooning the wrong players. I know you gave him a huge contract, but Brandon Marsh, I don't even know why it's not a thing that he's playing every single day now. Whit Merrifield's getting a lot of time filling in for a bunch of different roles, and he's been awful too
He's
this year.
batting. He's Whit Merrifield is batting 107. I mean,
Yeah,
that is just an atrocious batting average, even well worse than
and he's been
Castellanos.
playing a lot too. He's been playing at least 4 times a
Yeah,
week.
it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why Marsh doesn't like, oh, he's going up against the lefties. So what? Who cares? I mean, you play Bryce Harper against lefties. Granted, Bryce Harper has a far better career resume than Brandon Marsh. But at what point does Brandon Marsh start getting that sort of respect where he gets played every day? I mean, he's hit well his entire career as a
I think
Phillies.
we're not that far off. I think them showing that, obviously, because all the platoon players, when they are playing, have been batting at the bottom of the batting order, but moving Marsh up that high into the batting order shows. And they still, that's the biggest thing, too. Him batting fifth now, they don't have a cleanup hitter right now. I
Yeah,
don't like
JT.
I don't like
We've
JT in
talked
that role at all.
we've talked about how JT seems to now be out of his prime, mainly defensively from what we said last week, and it showed. I forget if it was the game yesterday or the game before that, where he had a throwing error on an attempted steal attempt that allowed a run to score, and things sort of derailed after that. So yes, I think that was yesterday because that was the night we lost. Or maybe that was all the way back during the City Connect game. I don't know. My memory's a little fuzzy, but
Are you talking about the
yeah,
play where the ball hit off his wrist?
tried to throw the guy out at second, went into the outfield.
I thought you were
Instead.
talking about when the ball hit off his wrist. He was taking some
Yeah.
nasty shots behind the plate recently with the ball hitting him in the neck
Oh,
and
I
the
did see
ball
that.
hit him
Yeah.
in the wrist.
Yeah,
So
but just to recap, as we said last week, the pitching has looked really good, but the offense has just been god awful. It's been hard to watch. So before we transition out of Phillies talk here, just to give a quick one more update, we are now going into the top of the 10th, still tied 1-1, obviously. Sir Anthony Dominguez is set to come in for the 10th inning. Aaron Nola's final stat line on the game, he pitched 7 1/3, allowing only 4 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts. The only run coming off a solo home run. Jose Alvarado pitched 2/3, allowing no hits. Hoffman pitched an inning, allowing 1 hit, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. Another good appearance out of the bullpen for Hoffman. And Sir Anthony Dominguez. Okay, now he's gotten 1 out in the top of the 10th. So, pitching's
it
been
always
good.
seems to be that one elusive, at least one elusive home run for Aaron Nola. As well as he pitches,
Yeah.
though, it always seems like the ball finds a way out of the park when it doesn't go good. So, and that's kind of what happened to Zach Wheeler. He's not the most known for throwing home run hitted balls, but yesterday the grand slam that he gave up, Zach Wheeler's. I don't know if he's struggling or just they're struggling in starts with Zach Wheeler because he has yet to record a win. And remember, we were
I think
talking
it's
about
been a little bit of both. His last outing was a bit shaky. Before that, he looked good and just no run support. Same thing tonight with Aaron Nola. It's really a shame how just god awful this offense has been. And usually when they start off the series slow, it's been the opposite. It's been, good offense, bad pitching, but and when that's the case, the games are at least watchable because at least you get to see some offense. I mean, it's been hard to watch
Yeah, they
lately.
just go through dry spells for long periods of time, and you can't just rely on getting to extra innings every single time and trying to win with that ghost runner and putting all that pressure on your bullpen after you're getting good outings from the bullpen and the starting pitching. So they got to figure it out. What would you do personally with the batting order if you had to switch things up right now? Obviously, we could always talk about the most pop culture topic that there is with Kyle Schwarber batting leadoff, but if you want to say that, you can say that. But do you think there's any changes that they can make to spruce up this lineup a little bit?
If it were me personally, now it's not that I don't like Kyle Schwarber as a leadoff hitter, but as you said, we don't have a cleanup hitter right now. So because of that, not because of Kyle, not because I'm saying Kyle Schwarber can't be a leadoff hitter, but just because we need a cleanup guy, I would move Schwarbs to cleanup. I would put Trey Turner as the leadoff hitter. I would put Brandon Marsh batting second, and I would have Harper stay in the 3 hole. That's what I would do as of right now.
You
Probably.
actually one jumped me because I was already going to call you out for having two in a row, but now you made three in a row. You comfortable with having
Oh, I
three left?
wasn't even. I wasn't even considering that. Yeah, I wasn't
Because
even
some people were
factoring
talking about Brandon Marsh going to the leadoff spot, keeping
that. Right.
Trey and Bryce there, but then having to figure out what's going on with your cleanup. But that's where it gets tricky, having all the lefty bats up there and all the
Okay.
best
Okay.
bats on the
Scrap
team are
that.
pretty much
Scrap
lefty.
that. Scrap that. Scrap that. Scrap that. Scrap that. Scrap that. I guess with that being the case, see, this is what makes it tricky. All our best hitters right now are lefties, right?
I think
Uh,
they should, real quickly, if I can interject, I think they should really seriously consider putting Alec Boehm as a cleanup hitter because he's really good
I
with
don't
guys
know
on base.
about cleanup. I still like Schwarbs as the cleanup. I guess I would say Turner lead off, right? Probably put Bohm second, Harper 3, Schwarbs 4. And then you got, and
And
then
you're,
that's
but
the
you're
thing.
still
Then you
going
got to
two
put
righties.
either Costi or then you got to put either Costi or JT in the 5 hole because you've already used Alec Bohm in the 2 hole, just so you don't have a bunch of lefties in a
But you
row.
still have two lefties and two righties to start off. You got two righties to start off and two
But
lefties to start.
that's still the best you can do. That's still the best you can do in terms of 1 through 4. If it wasn't for the whole lefty righty thing, I would definitely do um
Turner,
Turner,
Marsh, Harper,
Marsh, Harper, Schwartz, Bohm.
Schwarber.
If it wasn't for the whole lefty righty thing, that's 100% what I would do. And you
I'm
know
down
what?
with what you're
I
saying
would
with
do
Kyle
that
Schwarber being.
against I would do that against right-handed hitters then. Because then you're not worried about having a bunch of lefties in a row until somebody comes out of the pen. But then there's guys you can kind of bring in to pinch hit and kind of work around that. But maybe against right-handers, do something like that.
I wonder what it's going to take it to actually consider Kyle Schwarber to go to the cleanup spot because I think that would be the best suited lineup that they could do. But I think you would maybe have to move Bryce up to the two hole if you
I
do
don't
that.
want to move Bryce out of the 3 hole. I don't.
I don't really
I
want to do that either, but I also don't want to have two lefties so that it's a known thing that the two best hitters, arguably in the lineup, are coming up back to back, and there's going to be a certain way that pitchers are going to pitch to them.
Well, anyway, just one final update. Sir Anthony Dominguez, best name in sports, by the way, has gone 1-2-3 to retire the side in the top of the 10th. So now the Phillies just got to get it done. Whit Merrifield is due to lead off. That would mean Stott is on second to start the inning. So hopefully they can walk it off here.
All
But
right,
as
Whit
this
Merrifield. Well, here's your
concludes,
moment. Here's your first
yeah,
moment as a Philadelphia
you
Philly.
know
So,
what? I'm gonna keep game day up in another window just so I can keep tabs on what's going on. But to wrap things up here, as the Phillies head into the bottom of the 10th, we have the NFL draft coming up, and I know you wanted to touch on that topic. So, give me your thoughts. Who should the Eagles take in the first round?
yeah, well, they just locked up Devontae Smith today to a 3-year, $75 million contract extension and took on his fifth-year option. So
Basically even more than that because I was about to say that because of the option, so it's even longer. I think he signed until 2028, but
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
2028. That's interesting, though, that it was only a 3-year deal on the deal on top of the fifth-year option because I would have thought it would be a 4-year deal, and 25 million was actually a little bit more than I thought he was going to get. I thought it was going to be more like 23 million ish, but an extra 2 million. Devontae Smith's my favorite player on the Eagles, so I'm happy with the
Yeah,
deal. Happy
and
to have him
somebody
locked up.
pointed out. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but somebody pointed out that because they already gave him the 5th-year option, Devontae Smith, if he wanted to, he could have waited until the other wide receivers got their extensions so that the market would jump up a bit and he could make some more money. But he was just focused on re-signing with the Eagles. So, I mean, heck of a move there from Devontae Smith. Shows you he's dedicated to this team. So, a great move by him to just go ahead and sign whatever the Eagles offered him.
$51 million guaranteed, and the annually payment is actually the same that AJ Brown's making. So 25 million a year for both wide receivers. Not too many teams can say that they have two wide receivers making 25 million. I think the Eagles are the only team that has that going on. I don't know if the Bengals are going to strike a deal with both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and be the next team to do that, but it's pretty much a rare case, but it's an opportunity that you have to seize as being the Eagles with those two talented players on your roster. So the offense is locked up. And if we're talking about draft terms, I think you really got to start looking at the defense. Not only do you have to look at the defense in the draft because you have to address the defense with the way that last season went, but if you look at the way that this draft board and the prospects and all the scouts have the prospects rated, you're probably going to be able to get a very, very good defensive player.
Pache just walked it off.
Who did?
Pache. So with Merrifield and his at bat, he knocked Stott over to third. Alec Boehm came in to pinch hit for Rojas, grounded out to short. Pache then came in to hit because he had previously pinch ran for Kyle Schwarber, and he singled on a ground ball to right field, scoring Bryson Stott to walk it off for the Phillies.
Well, you don't see it pay off that way where you take one of your best batters in the lineup out just to have somebody better to run, and then that person ends up coming through in a batting situation.
Yeah,
So
I was actually worried about Pache in there instead of Schwarber against a right-hander too, which Schwarb's definitely would have benefited from, and Pache getting the the righty on righty matchup, but he's able to get it done. Singles on the ground ball to right fielder Michael Toglia, who that guy. He's an intriguing prospect in my eyes. I'd like to
he was
see
one of my
more of
favorite
him.
MLB The Show players. I think it was last year or the year before to use in the
Oh
game.
yeah, he had a big card in MLB The Show, but yeah. So the Phillies get the win. They once again go back to being above 500. We'll see how long that lasts this time. Hopefully they can win tomorrow night and go 2 games above 500. So that no matter what happens, they can end the series above 500. That'd be a nice little win for them. But yeah. So not to quickly cut away from Eagles talk, but Phillies with a walk-off win. So there's a positive. Still horrible offense, great pitching, but they were able to get the win. So that's a win is a win.
Yeah, and real quickly, right before we jump back to the Eagles talk, real quickly, the Phillies this week should handle business with the two series that they have. They're
They have
two very
3 series that they should be able to, they have the Rockies right now. I believe then they have the White Sox, and then they play the Reds again. I just want to see this walk-off real fast. Oh, that was a hard hit ball opposite way.
Still should have never made it to extra innings, but I'm glad that we were able to, end things and not be on the losing end. But talking about the Eagles and the NFL draft, the way that the prospects and the scouts have scouted the prospects, you're probably going to be able to make out with a really good defensive player at 22 with the run on quarterbacks at the top of the draft that's expected, and just a lot of we have 3 wide receivers that can go in the top 10. This is the first draft I can remember in quite some time that defensive players, there's not a clear cut number 1 defensive player that's even going to make it into the top 5. I don't even think we're going to see a defensive player draft in the top 5, and maybe even, maybe 1 or 2 in the top 10. So I think the wise thing for the Eagles to do is sit back. Maybe at 22, they also have multiple second-round picks that they can go up and make a play. That they really like a defensive player. Maybe that was how he's playing all along. He didn't want to pay Hassan Reddick because he liked one of these edge players in the draft, and he's planning on moving up for them in the draft. So
I don't want to see them take an edge rusher. I mean, not to act like Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith can replace the production of Hassan Reddick, but when you factor in those guys, you factor in Josh Sweat, you factor in BG. We got a plethora of guys edge rushing. I want to see more of Nolan Smith this year. So I don't want to just go ahead and take another edge rusher, especially since we took two D linemen in the first
yeah,
round.
but you also have to think with the mentality that one, Josh Sweat took a restructured contract to come back to the Eagles, so his future with the Eagles beyond this year is in doubt. Brandon Graham's going to retire after this year. We don't know what Nolan Smith is, and Bryce Huff is going to be around for at least a couple years with that contract. But really, the
I
only
guess
person
that is
you
a
can
good
count on
point.
being around is Bryce Huff.
That could be a good point. But I would like to see what this D line can do this year before we spend a first round draft pick on an edge rusher. I mean, I would like to see what Nolan
Well, I get what
Smith
you're saying because then you would have
Bryce Huff
another
can
guy,
do.
regardless of his pedigree. Like, say it's Dallas Turner, I'd be happy if they were able to get the Alabama kid, or maybe even a Jared Verse. I'd be happy with that as well. But that means that you have to move up in the draft. They're not going to be there at 22 for you. But you're kind of in the same scenario. Maybe not those two guys, but if you reached on an edge rusher at 22, you're kind of in the same scenario of trying to find out if he can play like Nolan Smith was in that scenario last year, even though you had Hassan Reddick and that kind of limited him a little bit. But I think they should, a lot of people think defensive back. The number one prospect that I like is Cooper DeJean. And I know a lot of people are a little weary of the white cornerback and this, that, the other. But one, this dude plays safety and corner, can line up in the slot, makes plays, tackles, catches the ball, and scores touchdowns when the ball gets into his hands, and is a punt returner. So I
I
love the
mean,
versatility.
you took the words right out of my mouth. Because I was about to say I want to see them go DB. I would absolutely love Cooper DeJean. And looking at this year, I really want to see more of Keeley Ringo out there along with Slay. But I mean, how many years does Slay have left? One at the most. How certain are we with Sidney Brown at the safety position? As much as I like him, as confident as I am in him, it would definitely be good to take a DB in the draft. And not only that, it's also, when you look at the entire roster, basically every position, whoever you draft in the first round, no matter what position they're at, they're likely not going to start for the Philadelphia Eagles this year because they have basically a solidified starter at every position, other than, DB, other than the corner position and the safety position, with the spots that either Keeley Ringo or James Bradbury is going to take, or the safety position that either Sidney Brown or Reed Blankenship is going to take. Now, one of them is going to take either position. Whoever they draft is going to take over that position, but those are the only two question marks, really. So I think the Eagles are really in a liberty to take a player at just about any position. However, I think DB is such an important position. I think Slay's going to be gone very, very soon. And Cooper DeJean seems like a generational type talent. And yeah, the white thing, I mean, look at Christian McCaffrey, right? How many white running backs have you seen? And then look what Christian McCaffrey's been able to do. I wouldn't look too much into him.
The reason why I like Cooper DeJean is like you can just even like you said, having a lot of positions locked up, even defensive back. I mean, you still have James Bradbury under that contract, so he's going to compete for a position, even though you have other prospects like Isaiah Rodgers and Keeley Ringo, even Eli Ricks played a little bit last year. So you don't know how those position battles are going to play out. But if you draft Cooper DeJean and have the luxury of doing that at 22 and not having to move up, or he's just there on the board, you're going to be able to find a spot to play him at.
Yeah, that is a good point. You can play him anywhere.
You can play him before. You can play him at safety if you wanted to. If he wins that out of camp and Sidney Brown is not healthy, and and I think he would have a really good chance of beating out Reed Blankenship even as a rookie in that time
Yeah,
being.
I'm not sold on Reed Blankenship at all. So
A lot of people used to talk about Reed as like, being the future of the safety position for the Eagles, and he's a very solid player. And I would feel comfortable if somebody goes down via injury, Reed Blankenship filling in for some time. I just think if he gained a little bit of weight, he could just be a sub linebacker, and that would suit him better. I don't think he's
I think that
athletic
would
enough.
suit him a lot better because, he's great in the box. I think he's phenomenal in the box, but
He's just not athletic
outside of
enough in space.
he's not nearly athletic enough. I do not like him as a ranging safety at all. It almost scares me. He looks like who was that? Who's that linebacker we had? Nate Gary. He's
I
like
was about to
Nate
say
Gary out
he's
there.
literally Nate Gary. That's who he reminds me of.
Yeah.
That's top.
So
That's
I
why I
would.
even think more so he could play sub linebacker if he
Yeah, I would
gained a
love
little
to
bit of
see
weight.
him
And
at sub linebacker, and I would
he's
love to
going to be
see
a good
them.
special teamer. He's a solid player. He's definitely, he's a little bit below an average starter in this league, but the Eagles brought him back for a reason. They want to keep him in the mix. But like you said, having the luxury of drafting any position, because I do agree. I think the Eagles are in a position where best player available is what they should do because they don't really have a glaring need
Yep.
on their roster, and they have a
Mhm.
lot of talent on their roster, but they do need to shore up some spots.
I tell you
A lot of rumors are pointing towards a potential offensive lineman. How do you feel about that?
No, I don't like that. You have a very young offensive line. I think that I mean, okay, Lane's getting a bit older, but outside of that, Jordan Mailata, young guy, Landon Dickerson, young
Just
guy, St.
extended. Just
Jernigan,
extended.
young guy. Tyler Steen, young guy. I think it would be a bit of a waste to use a pick on an offensive lineman because that's the thing. You take somebody at any position, like I'm saying, take the best available player. They're not going to start this year, but eventually they'll see the field. But offensive line is the one position where you're never going to rotate guys in and out. So if you take an offensive lineman and Lane Johnson doesn't retire for another 3 seasons, let's say hypothetically, then they're never going to end up seeing the field. I mean, the other 4
Yeah.
guys, as long as they continue to play how we expect, and as long as Tyler Steen plays how we expect, they're not going anywhere. So an offensive lineman you might take in the first round, and then no matter how good they are, they just never see the field. So I wouldn't go that route. I tell you, the one route I would like to see them go is tight end. I would like to see them go tight end first round.
Well, that's
Have
another
some,
thing. Brock Bowers possibly, I don't think he's making it anywhere close to 22, but I've seen mock drafts in the beginning having him falling to the Colts at 15. And is that somebody that you would consider moving up to draft?
I don't know about moving up to draft him. If he happens to fall to 22, that would be phenomenal. Have somebody you can pair up with Dallas Goedert. And then there's your guy after Dallas Goedert. This would be very on brand with what the Eagles have done at the tight end position over the past couple decades. You had Brent Selleck, who wasn't out of his prime yet, and then you drafted Zach Ertz, and then you had Zach Ertz, who wasn't out of his prime yet, and you draft Dallas Goedert. I think Ertz was 28 when they drafted Goddard, and I think Brent Selleck was around the same age as well. So it would be very on brand. It would fit the theme. It would keep the consistency of always having a great tight end. So it's something I would like to see if opportunity knocks.
And adding another weapon to the offense would just make that
Yeah,
offense even scarier. But
and
that's
not
also they
only
could go the
that,
route of keep going.
sorry, I was just going to say, not only that, but you only have 2 wide receivers this year. I don't really have
Well,
confidence in.
before you cut me off. That's what I was actually going to say was, or they could go and draft their third wide receiver.
I would like to see that in the
Not in the
second
first
round or
round, not in the
later.
first round,
Yeah,
though. That would
I
more so
wouldn't.
be one of those 2 second-round picks, and they've hit on skill position players like the LaShawn McCoys of the world and Deshaun Jackson's being second-round picks. So Dallas Goedert,
Miles Sanders as well. Yeah,
Miles Sanders,
Dallas
solid
Goedert.
player.
JJ Arthega-Whiteside.
Well, even if we're talking about offensive line, They spent what, a second round pick on Steen. They spent a second
Dickerson.
round pick on Jurgens. They spent a second round pick on Dickerson.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mailata is the only person that wasn't a first or second round pick that's going to be a projected starter for their offensive line. And he just got
yeah.
a what, $66, $68 million extension.
Yeah, because Lane, he was an early first round pick
He was
back
the
in the
fourth
day.
overall pick. He was the pick that the year that Andy Reid got fired, he was the fourth overall pick. He was the first pick for the
Yeah.
new regime.
And that's the thing is outside of like, picks like 15 to 30 in the first round, Howie absolutely kills it. It's like that one specific range where Howie really seems to struggle. I mean, early first round, he kills it. Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Lane Johnson, Jordan Davis, and then, in the second round, all those guys we've just
Well,
mentioned.
how do we feel about Jordan Davis, though? Was that truly the right pick? Because they traded up for Jordan
I would have
Davis and went
liked to
up
see
what?
Connor Hamilton. I think Jordan Davis is
I'm a
great.
Notre Dame guy, and I wasn't even just trying to be, a homer and say, "Oh, Notre Dame, Kyle Hamilton." Like we're talking about a 6'3" rangy dude that's going sideline to sideline. Like that's what I saw when I saw him on tape, and had an extensive look of watching all the Notre Dame games. So, but Jordan Davis at the time was hyped up that much. He was supposed to be an absolute run stopper, and he still
He
has
has
room to
been.
grow. I don't think he had the greatest season last year. He kind of tailed off after the Bills game. Um, really didn't show up as much in flash on paper, but I think a second year with Jalen Carter by his side and can really pay dividends for him. And it's going to be interesting to see that how they set up the rotation of the defensive line and who's playing inside and who's playing outside. But that could be another position that they feel like they need to shore up a little bit and spend one of their top 3 picks on is defensive tackle. I wouldn't rule that out
Yeah, I
because they're
mean,
always trying to add to the defensive line. They're always trying to add to the offense or defensive line. So I think the odds of them drafting an offensive or defensive lineman with one of those top 3 picks being the 2 second rounders and the first rounder, there's a pretty high chance that one of them is going to happen.
yeah. Yeah, like we said, they can go just about any direction. So it will be interesting to say. History tells us they'll probably go defensive line, because that seems to be what they or tight end. I would say if we're going based off what history tells us, I would say those are the two likeliest of outcomes. But only time will tell. We're out of time tonight. Thank you for joining the Paisan Sports
Real
podcast.
quickly, I think, you're missing something here. We haven't given a meatball a week.
We haven't. And
No
who?
meatball of the week. You're the meatball of the week, honestly, for forgetting the meatball of the week.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head who could be. Who I don't know. Who could be meatball of the week this week? I feel like there hasn't really been one. There hasn't been a big egghead in sports this week. Who's done something really dumb.
You want to just give it to Doc Rivers by default for what's going to happen?
I
You
guess,
think?
yeah, I guess let's just give it to Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers, because he screwed up. But I don't know, it might have been in the best interest of the Bucks because
I
now
actually, I have one, a meatball of the week. If you're not going to be able to come up with one, so the UFC 300 was this past Saturday. It was electric. We're going to talk about a moment real quickly, but there was a fighter, Jalen Turner, who's 6'3", who fights in the 155 division. So he's the tallest dude in the division. Has insane knockout power, ranked in the division, and he's fighting a Brazilian dude, Renato Moicano, Money Moicano, and it's a ranked fight. And Jalen Turner ends up dropping Renato really, really bad in the first round. And he walks away thinking the fight's over. And after he walks away thinking the fight's over and then looking at the ref, like, why are you not calling the fight? And he's like, he's still good. He's still fighting. Um, Ends up getting finished in the second round via TKO because of strikes on the ground. So he goes from thinking that he won the fight and he didn't like walk off and start talking to his corner or anything, but he's like pointing at the ref like, oh, he's done. He's done. And he's like, no, I'm not stopping the fight. And then a round later, he's in full mount getting absolutely blitzed and loses the fight. So Jalen Turner, you're the meatball of the week for not finishing the fight. But real quickly, while we're talking about UFC 300, Dante, I don't know if you watched the card at all. We had one of the craziest UFC moments of all time happen. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. And after an electric fight for 24 and a half minutes, Max Holloway points to the ground and tells Justin Gaethje to meet him in the center of the ring for the last 10 seconds to throw haymakers at each other. And they proceed to throw haymakers at each other, and Max Holloway slumps Justin Gaethje out cold with 1 second left in the fight, completely out cold as the underdog. So that was one of the craziest UFC moments that I've ever seen in my entire life. And watching all different types of fights of the last 4 to 5 years live, that had to be the craziest moment that I ever seen. So
That does sound, yeah. Actually, I might have to look that up. Just
I don't
haymakers
know how you
thrown.
didn't see it online. I mean, he's literally pointing to
I
him at
don't
the
pay
center of the ring.
attention to UFC. I don't pay attention to UFC, but
You got to start,
um,
dude.
maybe I don't know. I got so many. I got so many other sports. I've been. I got two different soccer teams. I got.
Are you gonna start watching the WNBA now that Caitlin Clark is
Oh, I
on
can't
the
wait for
Indiana Fever?
Caitlin's first game. I can't wait for Caitlin's first game. Actually, before we get out of here, real quick, I had to look up when the WNBA season starts. It says it starts next month, which seems odd. So why the college players who get drafted, they just get a month off and then they're right back to hooping? I mean, granted, the WNBA season is a lot shorter, but yeah.
Yeah, I actually didn't think of it that way. I thought I thought you were more so in relation to the draft and then that happening that quickly. But yeah, that is interesting that it happens that so
It
quick.
happens very fast. The season just ended. They're already drafted, and
Well,
then they don't start playing that.
there's only a select amount of players that are actually going to be in that situation where they're playing in college to
True.
that next point. You know what I
But
mean? So
yeah, so if my information is correct, Caitlin Clark will debut in the WNBA next month. I'm very excited for it. I can't
you
wait to
taking a
watch it.
future on the Indiana Fever as a Paisan pick to win the championship?
No, they're. How do you go? Look, Caitlin Clark's great, but I don't know if she can take the worst WNBA team to a chip immediately. Granted,
Imagine
I didn't
that.
know
That would
much
be
about the
must see
W.
TV. A lot of people would be tuning in for that if that was the case. If she can turn
A
the
lot of
Indiana
people are
Fever
going to be
around so
tuning
quickly.
in irregardless. And I even heard Serena Williams is looking to buy a WNBA team, which I think right now, if you're rich, if you have the money, that's one of the best investments you can make right now, in my opinion, because right now is the lowest you'll be able to spend to buy a WNBA team. And after the Caitlin Clark effect, who knows how much you can sell for. So I think that sounds like a great investment. But that is going to wrap up things here tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for getting to witness along with us the Phillies walking it off for a victory. And we will see you next week.
Yes, sir. We'll be back next week.
See ya.